Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tech Talks from NASCOM Insights. We all know how the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted everything which we do. COVID-19 has disrupted traditional education and learning delivery mechanisms for around 300 million plus Indian school students. And now we have what we called as EdTech, which is in short education technology. EdTech has emerged as a panacea during the last 18 months, but with relevant concerns raised by educators, parents, students, and behavioral experts. At NASCOM, we believe that like the future of work, future of education too will be hybrid. And NASCOM Insight aims to build together experts into this first in a series thought-provoking discussion on omni-channel models and the transformational changes it entails and our readiness to embrace this shift to education, which would be personalized and standardized education to every child. How we intend to do that or how we can accomplish that is something which our expert panel will be talking to you about. My name is Lalit Katpalia. I am the president of the Society of Design Thinking Professionals. I'm also the chapter president for the International Institute of Business Analysts and a member advisory board NASCOM community. My past life, I've been in the technology business, wherein I've worked with companies like Infosys, Cambridge Technology Partners, Larsen and Toubro, and I have a PhD in computer science. I will now focus primarily to the beautiful people, the intelligent people which we have on board today. We have with us Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy. He's the director, SRF Foundation. Dr. Reddy brings in 27 years of experience in social sector, of which 23 years he's been working as a social development professional working in CSR, in NGOs, government environment, and for the last 4 years in academic institutions. Currently, he is associated with the SRF Foundation as its director, and he specializes in CSR, sustainability, not-for-profit management, partnership building, school education, digital education, vocational skills, branding, and government license. We are very happy we have such a beautiful person and a very intelligent person on this topic with us today. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. Next, we have Rimjim Ray. She is a co-founder of Spottle.ai. She is also an investor and board member for Wise Owl. She is a member advisory board for the NASCOM community. Rimjim Ray co-founded Spottle.ai, an AI-powered upskilling to hiring platform for students and recent graduates. Rimjim has led Spottle.ai to reach over 1 million users. Wow, 1 million users. Fantastic, Rimjim. And in securing funds by global investors across India, Australia, and Silicon Valley. Spottle now offers 5,000 courses and has issued 100,000 certificates to learners, achieving a GTV of 10 crores post going live in 2019. Rimjim, thank you for being here. It's fantastic to have you with us, and we would like to know your insights on EdTech, considering that you have this fantastic platform, Spottle.ai. We also have Nirmala Balakrishnan. She is the Deputy Director and Market Intelligence Practice Lead for NASCOM Insights. Nirmala has been part of NASCOM research and shares expertise on market intelligence, BPM, which is business process management, and IT skills. In her current role, Nirmala has been instrumental in setting the knowledge management portals catering to rich resource databases. So welcome to this panel, Nirmala, and we look forward to getting your insights into the education tech philosophy considering the COVID-19 scenario. We will be talking about education technology. We'll be talking about the concept and its shifting perspective since the pandemic. For this panel, we have Dr. Reddy, Rimjim, and Nirmala coming in. Let's talk about education tech. And Dr. Reddy, my first question would be to you. Education technology has existed over since the first MOOCs, which emerged in 2012, and I think it was a artificial intelligence course which came out of Stanford University. But these were largely limited to advanced education. I want to know from you, Dr. Reddy, how would you define education technology today? And a couple of more questions to add to this. When you think of education technology, what all channels or models are being talked about when we look at education technology today? Dr. Reddy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lalit. And to begin with, if you see in the education space, we have to categorize the schools, especially talking about the school education. At one is that high-end private schools. That is one kind of thing. Second thing is the central government run Kendriya Vidyalayas, Navodaya Vidyalayas. That is the second category. Other one is about state board run government schools, which are predominantly the different state governments. The schools are there. And also there is a fourth category of the low cost budget private schools. These are the four different kinds of schools. When you talk about EdTech, so EdTech is not the same in all those four categories. So when you talk about the high-end private schools, they are very much sophisticated and having the digital infrastructure, the connectivity both at home and in the school, and equipped with the skills and competencies. So next level is that the Navodaya, Kendriya, they are the better position after the high-end private schools. So somehow they are they stand at the second level. And both the government schools and the low-cost budget private schools, these are the institutions, which are struggling a lot with the EdTech space. If you see traditionally in Indian context, I am talking about 20 years back. EdTech means if any school is having the computer lab, which teaches the computer skills like MS Office, Word, Excel, like that, basic things, internet. That was the called, technology in the school and computer labs. In those days, NEET and AppTech and few other agencies, and they used to set up the labs on the outsourcing model. Thereafter, from government side, using the satellites, dish TVs and kind of thing, setting up of the TV in the school, and from the state headquarters telecasting the lesson. So that was the second model was there. And in between, there not much progress. This all happened 20 years back, and for last 10 years, not much progress made in EdTech space. Barring the high-end private schools and some Kendriya Navodaya schools. So what happened when COVID happened? When COVID happened, the schools were shut. The schools were shut for last 500 days. The learning was halted, and how to reach the children. So in the process, what we found that the teachers, when we ran the program, some of the government schools, what we discovered that 3-4 years back, the smartphone penetration among the school teachers around 20-30% kind of thing. But today it has reached 90% level of smartphones by the teachers. Whereas the children point of view, I'm talking about the government schools and low cost of private schools, budget schools. So only 10-15% of the children are able to access the smartphones of their parents, not of their own, and remaining 85% of the children not have any access. So in the schools, if you see the high-end private schools, any other fee-paid schools, they are able to access the digital content from various sources. This digital content is interactive in nature, and the children, if you have the access one-to-one basis of system, either it is the laptop or desktop or iPad, whatever the tab, they can able to practice it. So the content is whichever content available in the market today, which is interactive in nature, unless until you have your own personal device or access to one-to-one basis, you can't use that content. But whereas in government context, when initial days I'm talking about the TV and the studios telecasting kind of thing, it is a monologue content. It is a one-way content. There's no interaction. If you have the TV, you can telecast. But today's context, that content is outdated, and also the government hasn't prepared itself to expecting that forget about COVID, but anticipating that how to promote the edtech in the government school system in a big way, because size is very large. It requires huge investment. So when COVID happened, so everybody trying how to reach the children, schools are closed. So then see that, how to reach the through TV or a radio or a YouTube, different channels they tried, and the content was a big issue, because the available content can't be used in monologue system kind of thing. But if you want to use the market-based content, you need access to the digital devices. That is the problem currently existing. And second thing also, the content also available mostly in English and Hindi, and which are based CBSE schools pattern. But if you talk about vernacular language, that is the South Indian states or West Indian states or Northeastern states, and it's very difficult to have access to the content availability in various subjects. So this is the current status of the situation at EdTech. If somebody wants to talk about EdTech in the government school system, we have to address in holistic manner. So one is digital accessibility with this infrastructure, the connectivity, the content, the skills of the teachers, and assessment system. So if you address all those things, and it requires a huge investment and effort to bring that digital transformation of the government school system.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. This was quite interesting to know how we've progressed and what are the challenges which we have, and it's probably a digital transformation which we want to accomplish here. Thank you very much for this answer. The next question I would like to go is to Rimjim. And Rimjim, I just have this question for you. When did schools start moving towards incorporating technology into their education methodology? And what has COVID-19 done to the gradual shift towards education technology or EdTech?
Right. I think, schools over the last 10 odd years, talking about 2010-11, I was in Mumbai and it happened to interact with, some of the principals there. And, back then we're doing an MBA project on, how our schools upgrading or, our schools adopting any kind of a digital technology at all. And this, to quote Dr. Suresh Reddy, these are mostly private, to high-end private schools that we had talked to. And there were already, some early players like an Educom, etc. So which had introduced innovative audiovisual aids of teaching students. Even when I was working with Tata Consultancy, I led the mobility and the education, mobility and media portfolio. One of the clients happened to be on Macro. And it was in 2010-11 that we started talking about introducing mobility and how to make interesting mobile apps for children. So towards the end of, I think, the first half of the around 2009, 2010, that is this thing talking about audiovisual aids to make education more interesting, to introduce mobility, mobile apps. I think smartphone basically became a game changer.
Okay.
So I think that the smartphone was a very important milestone for EdTech.
Okay.
And the important milestone was probably YouTube, so even if MOOCs came in 2012, 2000 YouTube came, and then you suddenly realize there's a lot of things you can just, learn by watching YouTube. Children can learn coding by watching YouTube. You can learn very simple practical things by watching YouTube, how to do your science experiments. I think YouTube is the first teacher, and that way, beyond physical teachers. So all these milestones kind of shifted, made the shift and started giving the signals to schools that traditional education needs a revamp. Of course, teachers are important, and I think I'm the biggest fan of textbooks. I still do not like Kindle, and I still like to read my books physically. But having said that, whatever technology is offering to you, you have to make sure that you're using it to deliver education even more intelligently. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of, I think, why I like EdTech, while it has unfortunately so far remained a metro phenomenon, and now with the government giving it a push of taking it to beyond metro cities, I think it's a great leveler.
Okay.
To talk about students, who might not have access to the best teachers in the locality. or who are staying in remote areas, or whose father is or parents are, say, migrant workers, so not the most conducive environment to studying in set physical schools. For them, EdTech could open a lot of possibilities, of education where you are, to making it, breaking down the walls of education. EdTech has definitely made education cheaper. But what I think what has happened and what went wrong is what Dr. Reddy directly pointed out, that it go beyond those high-end private schools or beyond the iPads and the iPhones of the elite people.
Yes.
It did not become a mass phenomenon.
Sure.
COVID has made it. It has made it a mass phenomenon.
Okay.
That it says that every child needs access to good technology to study. Suddenly, schools were closed. 500 days without schools, and there was no other. I mean, it was not a gradual shift. It was you either do it or die. It became a do or die situation. Now, how do you cater for these children who are cut off? The children in villages, children staying in slums with no access to smartphones, etc. What do you do to make sure that technology, technology is so powerful that it can break down all these class barriers and can make education accessible to every child? That is what kind of COVID has forced us to, kind of confront. That, ideally, EdTech should be breaking down barriers. But however, in India, it has remained a largely, as I said, that remained a largely elitist phenomenon. It is now, I think that it told the government, now wake up and smell the coffee. It has told so many schools which were kind of loitering on their technology adoption that, they don't gather adoption. See, I think the biggest, I think the biggest thing that technology has done for us, it has made life easier, and it shouldn't just be a classes thing. Think about we often make technology sound very, very complex. I give the example of a phone call. When a person picks up a phone and says hello, he doesn't think of all the complex telephony that is working in the background.
Yes.
So one, that, and second, technology has brought down the cost of data, and data that even with a ₹10 recharge, you have access to the internet. So those are the kind of things the technology has delivered. Now is basically the government has also kind of obviously started working. It has brought in the new education policy, which talks about digital education. And have joined hand, educators have joined hand. Large MNCs like a Google, has Google Classroom free. And there are smaller players. Of course, also which are which are kind of doing a lot of technology innovation. That I think that has made COVID a watershed moment for EdTech. And I think it's not a fad. It has evolved beyond being a fad to being a necessity. And of course, I think it will stay and become more and more a part of each of our lives.
Wow, that's good. From Dr. Reddy, Dr. Suresh Reddy, pointing out to how it started as a small computer lab to now Rimchim talking about how the YouTube and the smartphone has revolutionized. And I love the fact that you're saying that it has to be available to everyone, and the technology and what goes beyond the technology is not what we are going to be mattered about, but as a user, I should be able to use it. And I also agree with you that it has to be a leveler. And I think one of the first ones on YouTube was Khan Academy, if I'm right. That was one of the first places where people started to go. Very good, Rimjim. Thank you very much. And also for connecting Dr. Reddy's thoughts also, Rimjim. Thank you very much. We'll go to the next part of our panel discussion, which is about going hybrid. So EdTech's hybrid push for bringing offline and online learning together is a very big push. And the question which we all have in our mind is, can technology make it happen? We all talk about disruptive innovation. So is technology going to be disruptive and make the hybrid push for bringing offline and online learning together? So for this panel or this part of the segment of our panel discussion, I would like Nirmala and Dr. Reddy back again. Nirmala, my first question is to you. Classroom teaching itself, if we speak of majority of India, which is tier 4, is beyond regions and has been a challenge. So student fallout ratios are very high, especially girl child. How can education or edtech be useful also, given that majority of this regional disparity exists when it comes to having adequate and reliable connectivity and infrastructure? Nirmala, can you throw some light on this one?
Dr. Lalit. For me, actually, if you see EdTech or technology as actually, like Rimjim already mentioned, it is such a big, it has created a transformation in the education sector. So if you, earlier, if you would have, seen there were a few EdTech companies who were, bringing out solutions or innovative solutions that were used by a few schools or students. Now, because of the pandemic, we have seen that how it has exploded, and that's basically also because of the necessity that this has happened. And it has evidently shown us how this technology is making it a little bit more seamless for some of the students. Otherwise you would have also read there is a bridge that gap. So in a way you can say that some amount of learning is being bridged by these edtech solutions that are available. Some of the key areas that we have come across when we have done our studies, like usual, is how technology is being used to provide, maybe in terms of gamification that is being used to provide edtech solutions. So for students, it becomes a little bit more engaging to understand how you can study. And of course, when you are in an online world, it is difficult for a tutor to explain things when you're not face to face. So they'll have to think of some different methods to keep the child engaged throughout the day or whenever this. So there are different ways that these solutions are helping these classes to take place. But also, like you said, it is also an issue of accessibility. Like already Dr. Reddy has mentioned that it's not. We see this happening more in the metros or cities, but even there, if you see, there is a big disparity. There are people from the lower area strata where they may not have access to these kind of tools. Even a small smartphone. If there are 2-3 students in children in a house, and a phone there is just one phone. I don't know how will they go to a school. So EdTech, yes, it is a great solution, for bridging the kind of learning that can happen in the country, but we have to see how do you bring the accessibility. There are many solutions. There are, like he said, multilingual solutions are required if you want to reach to the rural most area in India, because then how do we cater to those kind of students? So it's still a long way, but yes, technology is helping. The steps are very small, if you say right now, but I guess we will have to work hard to reach that level. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you, Nirmala. Fantastic. So what you're saying is that EdTech definitely has helped, but yes, we do have issues of accessibility. We do have issues of multilingual content, as Dr. Reddy also spoke about, and we still have a long way to go as far as EdTech is concerned. Thank you, Nirmala. Dr. Reddy, I come back to you. My question to you is that we've seen some success during the pandemic. Some models, still teacher or education centric, seem to be successful, such as all students joining an online class with live teaching, or teachers recording class videos for offline viewing by students, followed by a live online quiz. What models do you think will dominate going forward in the Indian context? Will it be a true hybrid model exist, or we would have students in class and offline studying together? These are a couple of questions. And the last question is, what factors may have to be worked out on an urgent basis? I think, Dr. Reddy, this is a beautiful question considering your experience.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit. Just I would like to share that the COVID, one positive thing it brought is that the changing of the people's mindset towards the digital. So whatever the government system or policies are not able to bring that change, but this COVID brought that. So in every walk of the life, whether it is the in the domain of the e-commerce or health or banking or the schooling, for the food order, everything. So technology is brought a lot of change during the COVID situation, and it especially in school context, from the teacher at the school level to the topmost official in the education department, the state level, everybody was started thinking about how we can use the technology to reach the children. That was the sea change it brought in, and it also helped them to think about where we are and what we are lacking and what we need and how it works and kind of thing. So this is another development that happened there. But as an organization, for us as an SRF Foundation, I would like to say that before COVID and during COVID and after COVID. So
Okay.
in three contexts how it happened. So when initially before COVID, as a part of, when we are at any government school, we try to transform them as a model school best in the government context and rural context. So one of those interventions is that digital transformation, along with the physical transformation, academic transformation, leadership transformation, and digital transformation.
Okay.
As a part of digital transformation, we have variety of programs like mobile digital buses, we have the smart boards, we have the digital theaters, and also we have the what is it called, the smart Android TV and tab model. So there is a 4-5 kind of technology based teaching learning processes we introduced in the government schools. And apart from that, and also there is one more thing I would like to share, that before COVID, when there is working with a partner called IBM, there is a program called a Teachers Try Science. It is a program IBM has been rolling out across the globe. So they want to roll out in India as well. To make use of this program, the resources are there online, but the resources are in English medium. If somebody wants to use those things in the school, we need to have the either computer systems, we need to have the power, the connectivity, teachers' ability to download those things, teachers' ability to prepare and upload those things there. What we discovered when we rolled out this program, in the schools, all these things are not there.
Okay.
So then how do you use that platform? So then we discovered that instead of with our limitations and kind of thing, not able to access and use and those things, how we can teach the rest of the world without having anything to teach the science. So that we can upload into the Teachers Try Science web portal. So what happened there? So if you want to use that content, we need to have the sophisticated science labs in the schools, which we don't have.
Okay.
And we don't have the digital platform, what I said to you.
Yes.
So what we discovered that, so we, at the time, the WhatsApp, the smartphones and WhatsApp penetration is just happening, the 20-30% kind of thing. So we used that the teacher's smartphone as a tool and WhatsApp as a platform to share, and the teachers started capturing the photos or records using the smartphone. And also from our side, we are teaching the teachers how to teach science using the low cost, no cost recycled materials without having sophisticated science lab. So with this approach, we developed a teacher's the training manuals on different science concepts. And the same thing we uploaded onto the Teachers Try Science portal to tell the rest of the world how you can teach science without having anything. That is how we started there. So when this COVID happened, so now suddenly the schools are closed. So how to reach children? So when we started applying this WhatsApp-based kind of thing at children level, so when we got the details about how many children have the access to the smartphone, the WhatsApp kind of thing, as I mentioned earlier, 10 to 15% of the children, depending upon the state to state, and they're having the access to the smartphone of their parents during, before, after the working hours of the parents. So using those WhatsApps, we found the WhatsApp groups of the children of different classes, and we started sharing the physical workbooks, what we used to deliver earlier, the digital worksheets we used to share with the children and through WhatsApp, and they fill those things and we correct those. That is the one thing happened. Another question is there, but what about remaining 85% of children? They don't have any access. So for them, we started the called Mohalla schools. mohalla schools, like street schools, close to their homes, engaging the local volunteers as a teacher and train them. And there the people run this mohalla schools. That is the one thing we did it. So WhatsApp groups one side, the mohalla schools other side. Apart from that, we also designed digital summer camps. This was, we haven't done earlier. This was the first time seeing it as an opportunity how to do some digital summer camp by connecting the children of different states. So from Gujarat to Bharuch location, and Dibrugarh and Kamrup in Assam, and there's a Dehradun in Uttarakhand, and the people from Bengaluru. So we're connecting these people a month-long digital summer camp using the online platforms like the WebEx or Cisco or the Google Meet, for training the volunteers and bringing the children, to share their learnings, to share their best practices, or various tips were given to them, and they're sharing from with each other from different parts of the country. That is one new thing we discovered that we are not explored before COVID. So that is one beauty of the technology. How can we use it? It is a simple platform to connect the people. That is the other thing we initiated. Apart from this, even the teacher training programs. We used to do traditional mode, like a classroom method of calling the teachers to one location and train them. So during the pandemic, we gone beyond four walls and gone beyond geographies where you are working. It is a pan-India level. And you're working with the Niti Aayog and nurturing the Atal Tinkering Labs. We train the teachers where we thrown open to the program to all the teachers in the country. Whoever come registration, we send the Google Sheets. They fill those the details. They run self-nomination, and we use these online platforms. We train the teachers. And also the mobile buses, what we have, digital mobile buses. We have 11 digital mobile buses in 11 locations. Wow. These buses used to go to the schools during the school hours and engage the children and teachers, and after school hours for the youth to learn about the basic skills and online services. During the COVID, what I have done, same time, how a teacher can take the physical class in the bus for the children, the same lesson, live telecast to the children through WhatsApp, and also recording of the same lesson for the future use. So these three things happened simultaneously where using the mobile bus. It was not thought of before COVID. So this is another example I wish to share that. And there's another innovation we started that. So there's a concept called digital champion teachers. So when you say teachers, the teachers of three categories: the teachers of below 35 years, the teachers between 35 to 50, and above 50. So when using the technology, there is a variation among these three categories. So the first category are more proactive, interested, and learn things faster, interested in technology kind of thing. So we identify the teachers who are the very interested, proactive using technology for the learning purpose. And we provided digital kit to them, like a high-end smartphone with camera, and that means high pixel camera with a smartphone. And there's a tripod, there is a mic system, there's a pen drive, there's a net connectivity. And we train them how to use those things, create their own content by using this kit. And the same content brought into the classroom where we set up the TVs and the mobile buses kind of thing. So we're growing the digital champion teachers. So this is happening now. So like this, it is instead of hybrid model in some cases, the blended model in some cases. When you say hybrid, it's both an offline and online together happen simultaneously. When you say blended, so sometimes we use for the offline, some cases use the online kind of thing. We're using the both hybrid model and also blended model. And especially the COVID gave us a lot of opportunity to think beyond what we have been doing and come up with innovative ideas and solutions.
Wow, Dr. Reddy, this is fantastic. I really love all the examples and what you have done, in terms of the frugal innovations of using WhatsApp. You also having the smartphone, and how did you form the Mohalla schools, the school mobile buses? How did you form the digital playgrounds to get people together? Fantastic. I think this is quite a story, and this is very interesting that how we have been able to use technology to get students to learn in the pandemic, despite the limited resources and also availability. Fantastic, Dr. Reddy. Thank you very much. I would now move on to my next set of questions, and which is related to personalization of learning delivery and the role of analytics in boosting learning outcomes. So we're getting into analytics, we're getting into learning outcomes, and I would request Rimjim and Dr. Reddy to sort of answer these questions for me. So my first question to you is, Rimjim, one very interesting hypothesis with online learning is that there can be tools that measure the online learning behavior of a student, specifically online attention, time taken to read online, time of the day when learning happens, online testing performance, and we can create a persona of every student that can guide educators to craft bespoke learning solutions. How real is this potential of edtech technologies at present? And has there been any positive outcome from using such personal student information? Rimjim, if you could help us on this one.
Sure, Lalit. See, I think, so say you've got two children at home. You don't give them the same dress to wear, even if in the same class.
Yeah.
Or even, the same, not necessarily the same food to eat, dresses are customized according to the child's body type. Of course, the food is customized according to the child's taste, etc.
Yeah.
When it comes to learning, however, it's a one size fits all. You see, as commoditized as food or even clothes, we're thinking about unique personas, unique body types, unique food requirements. When it's learning, we are giving this, we are expecting everyone to learn at the same level. So you cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. There's this saying.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that's what we have been doing, and we've been holding every child to the same standard. I think personalization is very, very important. Even the talks about it, which I think is a great step. Everybody doesn't have to be good at science. If you're good at great, and if you're good at arts, great. So I think EdTech will play a very important role in identifying those attributes. How you act on those attributes and data, of course, it's a question of policy, it's a question of culture, it's a question of how mature your society is. But having said that, in fact, this Wise Owl, this company where I'm invested in, they're doing something interesting at the K-12 level. They are delivering adaptive learning. Yeah. So basis the child's performance in certain tests that they take, the lessons, the resources are adapted accordingly. So depending on the proficiency level, etc., the lessons are adapted. So I think EdTech does give you a lot of interesting data. It helps collect a lot of data. It helps you, as you said, the attention span, how you're performing. So it's technology makes it easier to collect and analyze that data and create a persona. So you can see upfront, which are the strength areas, which are the weakness areas. Where technology, of course, will be limited is, whether you choose or not, how you choose to use the data.
Okay.
Will you use the data to reward or to punish? Will you use the data to improve, or to say, all right, this person doesn't get science, so so he's not really fit? Or will you rather look at the data and say he doesn't get science, but oh wow, he's fantastic in English? Maybe a career in writing is what he should be aiming at. That how we are using the data is in our hands, but I think the future of education lies in personalization. I don't remember which. I think it is Finland. Finland has introduced very different way of looking at education at all holistically, and so they're looking at education which is focusing on each child. For example, history. I was just reading one article on how they are encouraging children to read history and make their own interpretations. Right? It's just textbooks history that they're giving the children. So that kind of personalization, I think, will be very important. Because as I said, the children do not learn at the same pace. When you're putting the child in a class of 50, 60 children and giving them the same amount of attention or the same amount of, so the same things to learn, the same resources, you're probably doing a disservice to him or her. See, having said that, I know it's not so easy. It's easier, for example, in a country like Finland. Dr. Reddy being a policy person or a social impact person would say that, while it is easy to say sitting in a drawing room that, yes, you should personalize, yes, you should do this, it's not so easy in a country like India. that is where I think EdTech can become the arms and legs of the teachers. You know, technology makes a lot of things which is very difficult to do manually much more simple. You know, it gives you the data, it can help you, it can help you tag resources, for example. You know, so these resources are better for a child who is more scientifically oriented, while certain resources are good for a child who is more inclined to literature. So there, I think, so that bridging of gaps also can be done through EdTech, you know, by tagging resources and, you know, tagging resources with, based on the proficiency level or the interest or the aptitude of the child. The earlier in life we start doing this, maybe we will have many more successful people. You know, there's an NASSCOM data, and you know, Nirmala and Naman would know better than me that only 25% of engineers coming out of engineering college are employable. Maybe because they're not in engineering in the first place.
Yes.
You know, maybe they're not meant to study engineering at all. So the earlier we do this thing about identifying the unique attributes of a child and trying and personalizing education within the constraints that, you know, our country has, a huge country, you know, limited resources, etc. Within all those constraints, I think the better it will be for the future of the nation itself. You know, we will be creating more able, more capable, you know, children going on to become adults who can take the country forward. So I think it's very, very important.
Fantastic, Rimjim. So just so as to summarize, what you're saying is EdTech is the road forward, and personalization is the solution which EdTech would offer. And we would be able to take care of everyone, considering that we're doing personalization. Very good, Rimjim. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have the next set of things to be discussed in EdTech, and I think Nirmala and Rimjim would be the appropriate people to talk to. The next section, we are going to be talking about challenges in scaling education technology or EdTech in India, and the impact of policies, specifically data privacy. So Nirmala, I have a question for you. In the context of India, where school learning is a complex activity for many students, it also turns out to be a fight for the right journey, you know, because we have many regions, we have households with less privilege, difficult living conditions, or a very restrictive social fabric. So the journey itself becomes a training experience for life. And digitalization is also associated with more sophisticated, stress-free living. But it also takes away the friction that builds the character crucial for future development in life. So my question to you, Nirmala, is what will educators have to do to ensure that they are able to still allow for this experience to happen while using digital means effectively? Sorry, this is a tough one, Nirmala, but I know you are an expert.
I would be the least experienced to say this. There is actual real life, you know, educators sitting here. But for me, I think, you know, the point is that we cannot do away with a physical form of learning. It can never be either or. It has to be together. It has to be blended, because you know that a physical school environment is something which always helps the development of a child. We cannot do away with that aspect of it. But like the key aspect here is because of the pandemic, what happened and what is the situation right now. Actually, Dr. Reddy has very clearly mentioned what are the key challenges that, you know, the schools and rural areas are facing in terms of providing this kind of education. So for me, one of the key things is, you know, like Rimjim said, even to get into personalization or providing that kind of input to students, you have to collect that kind of data to understand that how is one student different from the other, even in rural areas. So in urban area, it could be something very different challenge that they're facing, and while in the rural area, there is a different challenge that they're facing. So how do we collect that information and then use it for the betterment of the students? So for instance, there are so many, in terms of access already, if you see, Dr. Reddy has mentioned the ways that they have mobile vans, and even the government has the CSE centers which they had set up in terms of the Digital India plan, if you remember. So making use of that, I don't know, to provide the education courses, the learning courses that are available, and disseminating it to a larger group of students. And that way, you know, you have, once the pandemic is crossover. You have your physical schools that are running and technology that can augment the learning for them. It does not actually separate out saying, okay, you just have to go in for an online learning system. So that is something which will be very crucial. How do we augment all the technology benefits with the physical learning that can be available? And one more key thing is also we need to look at how the educators can be trained in this kind of a model where you are using technology so much. Are they actually equipped to understand how the role of technology? There can be pros and cons. We have seen like the privacy issues, data issues. When you're on an online medium, how do you protect your identity? These are areas that even the educators need to be trained, so that, you know, going forward, it doesn't become a student is very gullible at this age. So how do we make them understand about these kind of issues that they should be looking out for? The best part is that, you know, the government with the NEP policy that they have come out with is actually taking the right direction to set up, you know, the use of technology is actually something which is really very important. But yeah, like it's again, it is something which we'll have to really look at, taking all the aspects in place, because India is such a vast country. Every area, the needs and requirements are different. So customizing and looking at every aspect of students' growth is something that has to be really taken care of. I think that would be best that I can actually think of right now.
Thank you, Nirmala. So what you are trying to convey to us is that we're looking at something wherein we can use technology, but it is holistic enough to cater to someone from the village to the city, someone with accessibility to not someone who does not have the accessibility available easily. And you're also saying that it's not just the students, it's also the educators themselves who need to be equipped and trained for the use of technology before we come to the
right use of
technology. Fantastic, Nirmala. Thank you. Thank you very much. We now come to the last question for this discussion, and that's for you, Rimjim, the wise owl. We have discussed infrastructure, connectivity, and accessibility being two major challenges. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, what needs to be done, Rimjim, on an urgent basis to manage these roadblocks?
Accessibility and infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, when we are talking about infrastructure, we are talking about connectivity and accessibility being two challenges.
Right.
So, what would we recommend that we do, considering that these are the roadblocks?
Right. Right. No, so some of these challenges, I think Dr. Reddy has spoken about, and some of it we are seeing, in our work with either Spottle or Wise Owl, or some of the other edtech companies that I mentor or I'm on the board of. Infrastructure, I think the government has a huge role to play, in a country like India. And so this would mean things like, high-speed internet access. This would mean, data and voice cost coming down.
Okay.
So that is one aspect of it. How are you making sure that the connections are, and making sure that internet is accessible? That's the internet is basically the glue that is holding this dissemination of content together. Second is accessibility. Only 15% of students have access to devices, which Reddy has said. And in fact, this we just had a huge rollout in Meghalaya and Sikkim. It is corroborated by some of the facts on ground that, that either students do not have a smartphone at all, or the family owns just one phone. Typically, the father carries it. And, based on the father's availability, the child gets access to it. How do you solve these problems? So I think one, of course, that there has to be a lot of government investment in these areas, number one. But of course, the government cannot do everything. Refurbished phones, I think, can play a huge role here. Refurbished or factory seconds, or second-hand phones. So there are companies, there are startups that have come up which are handling, which are dealing in refurbished phones. So that basically brings down the cost of ownership of the device. Now, in terms of the subsidy that has been attributed to the education sector, of course, in India, education is still highly subsidized. one of the costs that has to be kind of taken into consideration is the cost of these devices. It has to be kind of walked into the subsidy model. Number one. Number two, as I said, doesn't have to be high-end smartphone. It can be refurbished phone. Third is your, it's now that your content or your technology, your ed tech has to be so robust. Make it like a phone call, right? A lot of sophisticated technology at the back end. The front end is a very simple, picking up the phone and say hello. So can we use existing technology that these people already have access to? Everybody has access, and most people have access to WhatsApp, for example, now.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have access to a phone call, So it doesn't, so, your high-end, high-resolution videos might not work across all segments that you're trying to reach. So here, WhatsApp-based bots or, text-based content, that can work. So that is the kind of innovation we're to see being worked out by schools or content providers or, or bodies like an NCERT in making content work in a way that it can be disseminated over less costly technology or less costly. Again, last mile connectivity, I think, is very important. I really love the concept of what Dr. Reddy was saying about Mohalla schools.
Yeah.
Think about like your, the computer kiosk that you have or the internet kiosk that you have, or maybe the village municipality or, the village panchayat, the village panchayat or your town municipality. Can they, in the spare time, they also serve as kiosks for the children to come and access, it could be a time sliced mechanism where they come and access that technology, that the time switching is possible. So what I think, that it has to be a PPP here, there has to be a private public partnership. Why cannot an Apple or a Samsung, work together with the government to make sure that, that maybe the, old iPhones become accessible at a much lower cost. Maybe an iPhone 3 becomes accessible at a much lower cost and they can be upgraded to, or they can be fitted in a way that that education can be delivered through them. So I think, so I think the way to solving this challenge is basically some of these technology leaders, who provide devices, provide data, come together with governments to work on lower cost solution to bring down the cost of the final cost of ownership. So having, so I kind of, let's face it, for someone for whom, an existence is a challenge or a subsistence is a challenge. If you're talking about them to invest 10,000 in a smartphone for a child, it is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that is where, the cost of device has to be walked into government subsidy. The cost of device has to come down. The cost of internet and data has to come down. And there has to be, there has to be a clear cut, as I said, a working arrangement between technology leaders. Google, for example, is doing a lot of things in making, Google Classroom free. And the government working together along with non-government bodies, along with startups. Spotter itself is doing a lot of work in making technology education cheaper for college students. So we work alongside with startups to create a level playing field. But at the end of the day, I think the government has a huge role to play in it. Policy-wise changes have to happen, and are happening also. The new education policy does talk about digitization of education and how you make it accessible. I think the intent is already there. Someone like a Dr. Reddy, who works with the policy, or Nirmala or Naman, or so from NASSCOM, which are policy bodies, or you, for example, who have come from an academic background, you can say, are these policy change? It's not just enough to have a policy on paper. It's also the will has to be there. Clear-cut metrics have to be there. So, and all right, I made sure I have all the government schools now have Zoom. It is free Zoom. But are all the children attending those classes?
Okay.
What is the ratio of attendance? I believe that with the right technology, and technology itself has huge. I mean, internet is practically free. The internet technology is free. It's a data cost that you're bearing. I believe that finally the cost of education, technology playing a major role, the cost of education is eventually going to come down. It might become at higher level, it is already cheaper than a physical education. A Harvard MBA costs you millions, whereas you can probably get skilled in education programs in a Coursera for a much cheaper price. The same has to now trickle down to a K-12 level.
Okay.
And I think with the right intent in place, it is possible to use technology to make edtech driven hybrid education cheaper than the physical alternative that we have right now. That's my belief, and that is where I said, government and private companies have to work together.
Thank you, Rimjim. Dr. Reddy, I saw your hand raised. Just give me a minute. I'll come to you. I know you're anxious to answer this piece. So Rimjim, what I understand is from an infrastructure viewpoint, I think you are recommending that the government play some role in providing high-speed intranet, and also in terms of accessibility of devices at a lower cost is an area where you want the government to subsidize and also ensure last mile connectivity. These are things which you want the government to focus on. And you also spoke about how the tech majors can also play a role in making technology availability at a universal level, and how while technology can play a big role, the accessibility is something which we need to focus on, and we also need to ensure that whether we are doing the right things in technology from a viewpoint. While you spoke about the smartphone being available, while you spoke about the internet being available, there are things which we need to put in from a contextual viewpoint also and address this solution. And yes, and you also are saying that just having a policy does not mean that we've cracked the problem, and the government has to play a huge role. Thank you, Rimjim. Dr. Reddy, if you could also enlighten us with your wisdom, and Rimjim also wanted you to speak about the fact, since you represent the policy pieces.
Yeah, thank you. To add to what Rimjim mentioned, that when talk about the connectivity and accessibility kind of thing, compared to these two things, the connectivity is mostly available nowadays in almost all parts of the country, and also costs also very they are coming down. So down the line, maybe next 2 to 3 years of time, that the issue of the connectivity will be addressed either at the school level or at the government level, the home level kind of thing. So I am more worried about the accessibility. You might observe that especially during the COVID situation also, if you want to buy laptop or desktop, anything else, the prices are gone up like anything. So one is the configuration is going up, and also the prices are going up. And if you are talking about lakhs of children, if you want digital accessibility, unless until there should be a revolution, like telecom revolution happened in the country, there should be a revolution should happen in the digital devices space. So which is affordable digital devices can be available, then only you can address the issue of the accessibility on a one-to-one basis. If you're talking about a school-based kind of thing, still the number of schools are more. Even if you want school-based devices you want set up, it also requires huge cost. So there is a one way, there's almost all 85% of market is there for the digital devices. At the same time, how the affordable digital devices can be made available by the market or industry or anybody else, there is the one challenge, opportunity. We have to see that. When we go to the next one, you're asking about your previous question about data analytics kind of thing. So again, I'm coming back here. The high-end schools, they're having the learning management systems and they're using it. You can know that, and as children get opportunity to one-to-one basis, they can answer the questions and get immediate response, where scores, how much they got, all those things. When come to the government schools point of view, they're using the EdTech for compiling the what children performing in various subjects, various classes, by compiling the marks or scores, what they got it in a physical form of testing, and just a database creating and sharing with the central location. That is happening, but what not happening is that one-to-one basis, digital mode assessment and learning and immediate checking and kind of thing. Those things are not happening at the government system. So and one more thing, as for the new education policy, what it says that and especially the schools, so we have to introduce the coding as a subject, the artificial intelligence as a subject, which talks about data analytics and all those things. So something is happening to especially the CBSE schools level, and training the teachers on the data part, that analytics part, how to make use for the the school education, various activities, purposes kind of thing. That is happening. But it's a long way to go. And I will finish it in the last line, with that. Other than these things, we also look at it, digital ability of the people to make use of the various kinds of digital devices which are going to be rolled out, and also how to use the various online platforms to participate, and how to use the tools to create content and edit. So in all those aspects, we have to build the digital ability of especially the educators. That is the focus. Apart from the accessibility and the connectivity and data analytics for the learning management system, all those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. So I think you focused on accessibility, which is a big problem, and the cost of the devices is still something which we need to work on. And I think you have ended it pretty well by saying that there is a new competency which is emerging for individuals or educators. And the new competency is how we adapt ourselves or how skilled we are in the use of digital devices. Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. I have to conclude this session, and I have to thank each one of you, Dr. Suresh Reddy, Rimjim Ray, and Nirmala, for spending your valuable time with us at NASSCOM Insights to enlighten us about education technology, specifically the hybrid pieces, and how that can help us get to make India a country where education has a focus using EdTech. We loved all your answers. We loved all the wisdom and knowledge which you shared. And we also am thankful that you have taken time out of your personal commitments and official commitments to make this available to us. God bless you guys. Thank you very much. This is Lalit Katpalia signing off for the Tech Talks for NASSCOM Insights. Thank you very much, guys. And hope to see you again for the next session on topics related to EdTech or areas which NASSCOM Insights is working on. Thank you.